Welcome to Soroka Speaks, coaching minds and elevating careers. We're so happy to have you here. We hope that you enjoy this episode and that it supports you to put your potential in motion. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Soroka Speaks. I am your co-host, Emily, and I am joined by my beloved and beautiful co-host.
It's Claire. And today we are going a little bit off piece to what we normally like to present and speak about, because Emily was at this most incredible retreat a couple of weeks ago, and I really want to delve into her entire experience. Let's just start by saying that you went to a Boy Scout camp. So
It's where it took place. Yes, there were no Boy Scouts there at the time. But it was held at a Boy Scouts camp on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State in a little area called Brennan.
just that alone blew my mind, thinking I am very much sort of the more girly one and high maintenance, but just knowing as an adult, the whole dynamic of we've just come back from Fontainebleau in Las Vegas, but prior to that, you were in the woods at this camp, which I find, the two worlds totally incredibly different, of course. But I really would love to delve into this if you're going to be open to sharing your experience. And I want to start really by introducing the company or the foundation that you went with was called Sacred Sons. So can you tell us a little bit about Sacred Sons and what they do, please?
Yeah, to the best of my ability. If any of them are listening, I hope I get this right. So Sacred Sons is essentially a men's work organization. So if you're not really familiar with that term, men's work is a term where, men get together and have intentional conversation. It probably looks a myriad of different ways. I don't know. I've never been in a men's group, but they are a men's work organization offering the opportunity for lots of growth and healing and accountability inside of their relationships with each other. And I believe that the organization was essentially modeled after how women's circles would gather, and women would gather in circle. And I don't know this for a fact, but my sense is that women have been gathering in circle, in ritual and ceremony for a long time in this era of humanity in this modern age. And I think that, for me, what I've noticed is over the last kind of decade and a half, there's really been a surge in the equivalent of men gathering in the same capacity doing men's work. And maybe before we go any further, I just want to pause and say, the context of this gathering in the container was all about masculine and feminine energy. So it matters not if you are homosexual or, part of the LGBTQ plus community. We're talking about the energetic dynamics of what it means to be in the masculine and the feminine, because all of us have both of those energies, and we, call on any one of those two energies at different times to execute different things, to cultivate different ways of being. And so in this context, I want to be clear that, we're not being gender discriminatory. We are endeavoring to reference mostly the energetics. Now, that being said, most of the people that participate in men's work happen to be assigned male at birth, and a lot of the women in women's circles happen to be assigned female at birth. I'm sure there are lots of LGBTQ plus circles and communities that are gathering in different ways, but I just want to preface that the context of this container was a little bit more in the sort of what we might consider like traditional masculine feminine sense in terms of not only the energies, but yes, in the way that we gather, like based on sort of what we were assigned at birth. So I just am sensitive that I don't want to exclude anyone. So hopefully that gives like a little bit more context in that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think what was interesting for me is, this is primarily aimed at men. And this specific event that you went to was the masculine versus the feminine. So it was opened up, like you say, to all genders, no matter how you identify. But there was quite a lot of couples that had shown up to the event as well. Can you explain a little bit more about, how perhaps their experience may have been different, or the purpose that it served for them versus individuals that showed up?
I think everybody that came to this gathering probably had their own agenda for some form of healing, or, the gathering was called Remembrance. So it's really like truly an opportunity to get back to our remembering of what is real and true and natural. So it was beautiful because there were singles there was couples there was poly people there was, different dynamics across the board. So again, as it related to kind of like the way in which we're dealing with these masculine and feminine dynamics, and then how we show up in relationship together, whether platonic or romantic, was it would, vary. The experience would have varied dependent on the participant. And while I'm not going to share or identify any of the experience of anyone else, what I noticed for the couples was an opportunity for a lot of the couples, and what I witnessed was really an opportunity to kind of clear out maybe some of like the stagnant energy or some of the habitual ways of being that might be getting in the way of them continuing to foster like a truly sacred, beautiful, and healthy dynamic as it means to building a life and a future together. That being said, we step into a container throughout the course of the gathering where couples are asked to kind of reduce their PDAs. It's a sober container, so the request is that everybody, maintain sobriety throughout the weekend, and even that, you take a vow of celibacy through the weekend, so that really you are doing your own internal work, whether you're in partnership or not. So I witnessed significant transformations both in couples and the individuals. I myself, feel that I've come out a little bit renewed in terms of my relationship with myself, a better understanding of where I have like a pretty strong developed masculine energy. And it's not just the shirt that I'm wearing today. But in the sense that I'm a single mom, I run my own house, I run my own business, my kids live with me full time. There are aspects of my life that I was going to say that caused me to, but for lack of a better term, that caused me to be in my masculine. And so part of it is like also just understanding what is masculine dynamics and what is feminine dynamics. And I'm certainly not an expert in this realm, but I know some experts in this realm now. And so it's been a tremendous learning opportunity and experience. And I did a post on socials yesterday just around like my view of like my former lovers and partners and even my friends that, were assigned male at birth. My perspective has really changed in the last couple weeks, especially around kind of feminist culture. And while sure, men have a lot of work to do, and men have certainly caused a lot of damage to the feminine, the masculine has caused sometimes some damage to the feminine, just in, as history speaks. And women have a lot of work to do too. We are also accountable for maintaining our compassion and our understanding and our ability to truly listen to the masculine. In light of this weekend, I'm listening to Alison Armstrong's The Queen's Code. And what she talks a little bit about is that sometimes I thought about it a little bit when you think about like feminist culture, and sometimes how it's like the man bashing a little bit, or we might call it like the emasculating tendencies that some feminist tendencies have. And even in the book, they actually refer to it as castrating. So castrating is like to deny the power, to take away the power from someone. So there are a lot of ways in which, women have been emasculating men for quite a long time. And, like in response to some of the damage that has been done, to women by the masculines. But that's, now we're just like swinging the pendulum too far to the other side. So for me, it was just like this very holistic perspective on like where we've become misaligned, not only in our energetics, like with ourselves, but in our relationships with other people.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I find that really fascinating. And I think, for me, there is a little bit of reflection personally when you bring that up, in that in my ex marriage, we both considered ourselves an alpha male. And we really had a power struggle over who was kind of the boss in, quote unquote, and who was in charge of things. And it really, it wasn't the reason that marriage didn't work. There was lots of reasons, but that ran true throughout our entire marriage. It was a struggle of power and a struggle of wills. And even now, I shared with Emily, we're still in a power battle 7 years after we separated and divorced. Still this power issue with him. But I do find, I find this whole topic really fascinating. And I wonder, is there any kind of tangibles that you could share where there might have been an activity or a reflection or somewhere where, you had to really dig deep and look at how do you show up or who are you being in those relationships that perhaps the listeners can also take that and really use that as a reflection. Was there anything that stands out for you?
Yeah, there's a few things that come up. Is I think that, the majority of humans are really well intentioned, like men, women, anywhere in between. I think that most people are well intentioned and men and women are very different. And in the book, The Queen's Code, Alison Armstrong talks a little bit about how sometimes these emasculating natures that women step into is in this comparison to the perfect woman. So consider where like we don't understand why a man does what he does or why did he act this way or why did he do it. Instead of like assuming the best intention or that like he has a reason or there's like, something founded behind the way they would act. Sometimes a lot of women, I'm speaking generally here, forgive me, take it all with a grain of salt. Take what sticks and leave the rest, please. So sometimes we will be judgmental, perhaps, of like a male's choices or activities or whatnot. And as opposed to assuming the best intentions or that they had a reason, we go to comparing them to the ideal woman that we have in our head. So this idea that as women, we all have this like ideal person, when we think about they should do that or they shouldn't do that, compared to who, compared to what. And if we really like kind of peel back those layers, it's kind of in like comparison to the perfect woman. We're not necessarily comparing it to like the perfect man. And again, these are generalist statements. So I think that's a really powerful place to look is when you are, judging a woman's behavior or judging a man's behavior, what are you judging it against? Like, where does this expectation or this idea of some like ideal person come from? And is that relative to the actual, like, who they are as a gender or who they are as an energy? And that was really interesting to me. This concept of like how we compare people to this like imaginary perfect woman. That was really really helpful. And I think just like the appreciation for how men and women are different. At one point through the weekend, I had shared that I was a little bit triggered because I was witnessing a woman who's in a very successful, happy, long-term marriage receive some support and some coaching around all these men. They gathered around her and it was a beautiful experience. And there's nothing that I have against this woman specifically. But what it triggered for me was like, why does she get to have this? Why does that happen for her and not for me? And how's she in this, successful long-term marriage and she gets this and she gets that and blah, 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 blah. There's a little bit of like kind of victim mentality, but the whole idea of the weekend is like, bring it. So I shared in that capacity, like I'm feeling a little bit triggered right now. The example is, my daughter's bed broke and I had to call my dad, who lives 3 hours away, to come and help me fix the bed. He showed up the next evening. He's an amazing, divine masculine man. I'm grateful I have, a couple in my life, albeit not a romantic partner. So there is ways in which, again, this might sound a little bit sexist and, if this doesn't land for anyone listening, then just leave it be. But for me, like I do look at some things in my house. I joke with my dad around like, it's a blue job, it's a blue job. It's a pink job. And again, this is not necessarily for everybody, but for me, fixing my daughter's bed was a blue job. I don't know how to go to the lumber store. I mean, I could figure it out, but because I'm super fucking resourceful and powerful and can do all the things to a degree, but do you know how long it would take me to do that? Do you know, like,
Mhm.
the quality of craftsmanship would not be great? The bed would probably have broken within like the subsequent couple weeks, I think. So there are
Yeah.
just certain things where, again, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, like I think that masculine and feminine energy and dynamics have this opportunity to complete each other and to complement each other and to, tap into what's available in our power within those realms in a different way, in an elevated way that maybe the opposite, gender or energy can't. And that to me is what I think is really beautiful and what I would like to continue to aspire to in my romantic and in my personal relationships is like we all have our strengths. It's okay that like we're not great at everything. In one of our former Us versus Them episodes, you talked a little bit about how one of the leadership styles that women can deploy a little bit more easier than men is this empathetic approach, because we're just naturally wired more empathetic on average on a whole. Again, generalization, generally speaking. So yeah, that's kind of, what I one of the other things I walked away was just like all of the ways in which I so appreciate what men do. And I'm so grateful. And I left to join you and Mike in Vegas and was like so grateful that Mike was there as like this guardian for us, and this masculine presence that I know you could lean on, and that I could lean on, and I can lean on you because I know you can lean on him. There was just a really beautiful way in which I really appreciated that. And then on my way, so just to give a little context, I went to this weekend gathering in the woods in Washington State, and then I immediately went to the SeaTac airport, got on a plane, and flew to Las Vegas to lead a 2-day for Global Gaming Women with Claire at the Fontainebleau, Las Vegas. So it was a totally like polarity of experiences, energetics, like even the air quality, right? Like breathing this beautiful Pacific Northwest forest ocean air to like the recycled, like oxygen pumped fake air flowing through the, air conditioning units of Las Vegas. Anyways, so totally, totally different experiences. But my point is, when I went into the SeaTac airport, I just found myself naturally like looking at every man, and in my head I was just saying, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do. Like it rewired something different in my own humanity, because I have been scorned. I have been cheated on. My marriage blew up due to significant amounts of infidelity that I talked a lot about at the beginning of my separation, and I've kept very quiet about for a very long time because of the shame, because I don't want to throw somebody under the bus. But at the end of the day, there is only simply what happened and what's so, and how it has impacted me. I was not aware of the damage that going through that did for me in my relationship with the masculine and with men, and the lack of trust that was brewed and then compounded over time. So for me to walk through the airport and to be literally looking at men in a new way, saying, and being able to genuinely say, like, thank you for all you do. And I even like my natural thought process was like, even if you're a liar, even if you're a cheater, even if you've done some dumb stuff, which women do all the time too, by the way. But even if you've done some dumb stuff, you are still a human that deserves compassion. You're still a human in this environment on this planet where nobody gets through this shit unscathed. And so to bring back a little of my own humanity and compassion inside of the way I was just sort of like blanketing like a little bit of like a perspective of the male gender and my experience of it. And again, not that these things aren't necessarily founded in a lot of areas, or in a lot of women's experiences, but that we also have work to do. And at the end of the day, all of those men are still humans, and they might be wounded little boys in grown men's bodies making unfortunate choices. But at the end of the day, they're still human. And this experience allowed me to remember and bring back my capacity for compassion and understanding, and the ability to potentially, look at what might even be negative or situations in from a different perspective, not condoning them, but just inevitably looking at them from a different perspective. Does that track?
100%. And thank you for sharing that and being so raw with how, your journey and how actually that impacted you. Because I think as humans, we kind of learn to just lock that shit down, right? That happened to us. And we all handle things totally differently. And, you and I are very similar in that we have a growth mindset and we're always focused on, moving forward. But that doesn't mean that the things that have happened haven't shaped who we are today for the good, but also those wounds cut really deep, right? And no one equips you on how to handle that. We know that we can fly off the handle. We know some people go take a sledgehammer to their car, or, whatever it is. Or I've seen posters up around here, this cheater, this guy that. You hear about people that steal money from business partners, men and women, all types and all people. But it is that wounds that's left behind that we just bury down, and it manifests in different ways. And one of the biggest impacts, like you say, is how you are viewing your relationships with the masculine energy since that situation happens, and being so open to address that rather than keep that locked down, going, okay, well, do I want to keep viewing the masculine energy in this way? Because it's not serving you, right? It is still there as a wound, and it will always be a wound. But now the way that you view it, and the way that you view your energy, and the way that you view that masculine energy in others has transformed. And I think, to go to such an incredible event like this is a blessing. I had never seen or heard of an event like this. They tell you, obviously, go see a coach if you want to work on, your future and your goals, and you want to build something. Or they tell you, hey, just go talk it out with a therapist or a counselor. You need to just go talk through what happened to you. But this is next level healing.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important for people to understand that there is so much more available and so far that we can go with our healing journey, and really the impact that it has on us moving forwards, even as, and I want to say quickly, but from you leaving the retreat and going to the airport, that change in you. And I'm not saying that you are not a nice person and that you didn't, you are very, very loving and very kind and very humble and very caring and empathetic to everybody, right? But this is a different level of viewing people, viewing the masculine particularly. And I'm so proud of you for doing the work and for sharing your story, because it's raw and it's vulnerable, but there's learnings that people can take from people being vulnerable and sharing their stories and their experience, and the growth and the opportunities that are available that perhaps we just didn't know that were out there for us.
Absolutely. Rumi has this quote, "What you seek is also seeking you." And I think where we have the desire to heal, or what's the other one? Like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think I really believe in that magic of life. I really believe the universe puts in our path that which we have an opportunity to use to further our own growth, evolution, and development. I choose to interact with my life and the universe in this way. And I knew that. So, this event, that was the second annual, and so only the second time that Sacred Sons had opened their container up to women. And I knew I wanted to go last year. My brother-in-law was one of the facilitators, and I knew I wanted to go last year. I felt the call, and I just couldn't do it. It was the first week of, school, kids back to school, whatever. When I saw the call, I actually saw the stories on Instagram that was like seeking female support facilitators for the Remembrance Gathering, and right away I knew, like, it hit me like one of those, it's like one of those kismet moments where you're just like, this is absolutely happening. Like, I can feel it in my bones. So I did my application. I had actually emailed my brother-in-law to let him know that I applied. Yeah, long story short, obviously was accepted in as part of the support staff. But it was like, I knew there was something I could feel it. I knew there was something available for me. And there's actually so many people, one couple in particular, their children are allowed. They take care of your kids. Like, there's a whole kids program. So it's like there's really no excuse why like anybody can't come. And there was this beautiful, beautiful couple that showed up, and they said, "We have no idea why we're here. We just saw the ad on Facebook and we just felt called to be here." And I watched them transform their relationship. I'm not going to get into details, but I will say that the physical appearance of this woman changed over the course of these 3 days. At the end of the weekend, she was lighter, she was brighter, she was like, you could see and feel a distinct difference, and I got to witness her in these processes that would have allowed her to create that significant change. So, it's one of those things where like maybe you don't really know like why you're doing it or why you're going or what the call is, but you just feel this innate calling, or this that you need to be there. And I think that was the case for a lot of us at this event. And I don't think any of us have any regrets. I mean, there was 300 people just doing deep work. And that was the other thing that was really supportive for me, was the ability to look at all of these men at different stages of life, and the women too. But what's helping me continue to like transform my perspective with the masculine and the way that I've been viewing men, at least the last few years. It was just so incredibly inspiring and refreshing to see so many beautiful men of all stages of life doing their deep work, showing up in honor of like protecting women and children and the family. And I was just reminded by, we can't generalize about one gender or the other. We all have work to do. We're all in an individual journey. We all deserve compassion. We all deserve respect. And that was just really inspiring and beautiful to witness.
I love that. Thank you. Is there any other kind of final parting wisdom or tools, something that really, I mean, the whole event was so profound for you, but was there anything else that, you know, for those of us that don't have access to something like this in, I don't know if there's anything like this in the UK. I'm going to have a look because I'm really fascinated by it. But, any nuggets that you can share as a final takeaway that we can practice at home or in friendships, in business, in marriages, relationships, where it's just, whether it's an interaction, whether it's a changing that inner voice that we all have, or that expectation of they're going to do something but they're not going to do it. So then you're angry before they even don't do it. Whatever, is there any final nuggets that you might have for us?
I think a couple things come to mind. One is if you notice can you invite yourself to start noticing where you are potentially berating the other gender or energy, depending on what your sexual orientation or gender identification is. So this applies to whether you're, hetero, cis, lesbian, gay, whatever it is. So can you first of all invite yourself to start noticing where you might be judging or berating the other gender or energy? And in that, what might it be like if you were going to get curious around what their intentions might be, as opposed to simply judging, their actions or their behavior? What if you could assume the best intention in people? And how, if you were assuming the best intention with someone, might that shift your perspective of the way they're potentially showing up? Perhaps we should have led with this. And as I said, like, I'm not an expert in all of the energetics, but there are certain energies that are masculine and there are certain energies that are feminine. And so masculine is about giving. It's about giving out. Masculine often represents, the father, the masculine energy. And I, for one, I'm a really good giver. I'm a really, really good giver. Feminine energy is all about receiving. Even when you think about our genitalia, the masculine is the giver and the feminine is the receiver. And so depending on who you are, can you start to notice some of these own dynamics and energetics in your own life? And what I mean by that is I don't have a lot of problem giving, giving, giving. I have a challenge in receiving. So my work in cultivating my feminine more is the ability to receive. Can I simply allow myself to receive? Whatever it is, receive a beautiful glass of water, receive a deep, you know, breath, receive a hug, receive a gesture, receive a gift, whatever it is. It's like the act of receiving. I might suggest, pay attention to, if you're naturally more of a giver, what's it like to receive? If you're naturally more of a receiver, what's it look like to give a little bit more? And in that, can you kind of cultivate your masculine feminine dynamics? And I'll leave you with this: is I did another one of these kind of things back in 2018. The Art of Fearless Intimacy. It was led by Kendra Kunav and John Wineland. And Kendra had shared at one point, in honor of cultivating the polarity in her relationship with her partner, who is a man and she's a woman, the ability to sometimes like surrender to letting the man lead. Now, there's another perspective that it's like, this is the thing with the masculine feminine dynamics. You can like pull them apart, because there's another theory that it's like men are the facilitators, like women are actually leading and then men facilitate. I think of it a little bit like men are the canvas, women are the painters. A little bit like men are the structure, women are the vision. And I should say masculine is the structure, feminine is the vision. So anyways, so Kendra was sharing a little bit about, for the sake of like polarity in her relationship, even if she knows like exactly what she wants to eat, and exactly where she wants to go out for dinner and what time she wants to go and whatever, if her man comes to her and is like, what should we do for dinner tonight? In honor of the polarity, in honor of the relationship, even if she knows what she wants, she says that sometimes she'll just choose to say like, I trust you, baby, you got it. Like let it, like, even if she knows exactly she wants sushi, she wants to go at 7:00, like, for the sake of her relationship, it was like, no, it's all good. Like, I trust you. You got this. for the sake of that polarity and for the sake. So that's an example of how we have an opportunity to choose what energy we want to lead with as it might be most conducive to what we want to create in our relationships. So consider, that act of giving, the act of receiving, and in honor of continuing to foster harmony in your relationships, where might you need to or want to deploy or withhold some of those energies in a different way? I hope that gives you some food for thought. And that this was educational in some form, or at least entertaining. I think that we'll definitely do another one of these. I really would like to bring on a special guest who is an expert in this area. I think it would be really good. So stay tuned. We'll see if we can make that.
Amazing. I would love that. So, yes, Emily, thank you so much for really sharing your experience. For me, it was incredibly enlightening. So in awe of you and the work that you do consistently on yourself to really be the best version that Emily can possibly be, and for yourself, not for anybody else. Everybody else just benefits from the work that you are doing. And I absolutely love you for that. I think you are just remarkable. So that is my gift to you, that you need to accept and receive the praise that I have for you.
Thank you. I receive wholeheartedly with gratitude and grace. Thank you so much, Claire. This was very fun. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Amazing. All right. Until next time, thank you so much, listeners.
Thanks for being here. Bye for now.